This video is going to be a film study / commentary on the signing of Robert Spillane by the Las Vegas Raiders. Of course, that happened in March before the draft. He's always a player that impressed me for the lack of consistent snaps that I thought he got. In 2022, really impressed me. Three games in particular, which I'm going to show you extensive highlights of. But look, the Steelers had him last year, I believe, a 1-year, $850,000 contract. He ended up having a career high 79 tackles in 2022 and showed a surprising level of versatility. I'm going to let a lot of plays run here. This first segment is going to be basically run reads, run plays, where he just shows significant, unbelievable aggressiveness, great awareness, downhill reads. I mean, other Steelers linebackers in 2022 did not play like this, other than Mark Robinson. When he finally got in the last two games of the year, I thought he played downhill as well. Look, in playing a career-high 590 snaps, I thought Spillane was the Steelers' best linebacker in 2022, best inside linebacker, that is. In March, he signed a 2-year, $9 million offer with the Las Vegas Raiders. There's just no way the Steelers were going to match that, even if they did want him to return. If you're a Steelers fan listening, let me know what your perception was of Spillane. But the film shows what it shows. And I did find plays that suited my narrative. However, there's a whole hell of a lot of good plays that I'm not even showing here. The guy's just consistent, but the price was too steep. Even though he played, look, in the last 4 or 5 games in 2022, I thought it was clear that he has surpassed Devin Bush. Well, he has surpassed Devin Bush a long time ago, and even Miles Jack. Spillane certainly made an impression on the Raiders in this game in Week 16. He had 12 tackles, showcased real coverage versatility in that 13-10 Steelers win. 3 months later, the Raiders rewarded him with a $9 million contract. Steelers elected not to match it. Can't blame him for that. Look, for me personally, I couldn't be happier for a guy who was an undrafted free agent, but began to carve out a career in the NFL with these two eye-opening plays in 2020 that I'm going to show you next. Look, I'm a Ravens fan first and foremost, but this guy makes plays when he gets on the field. He always has. He's been surrounded by some great players, don't get me wrong. When he first got in the lineup, I mean, Vince Williams, a guy, 98, who retired, I think, after 2020, extremely underrated football player. Having him next to that guy, a super smart football player who was aware and an 8-year veteran, I think at that point, certainly helped Robert Spillane, don't get me wrong. From a Steelers perspective, I guess Steelers fans would hope that Mark Robinson kind of follows in his footsteps, because Robinson was balling out in the last 2 games of the season, particularly Week 17 against the Ravens. I thought he played a fantastic game. Look, you've got these 2 plays here where he really started to make his mark a little bit in the NFL. He had the huge hit on Derrick Henry on the 3rd and goal late in the Steelers win down in Tennessee, Week 7, 2022, part of their 11-0 start. Just an incredible play that's been well covered by Pat McAfee, on his show, and other guys. Other guys were there at the same time, don't get me wrong. Then this play, the pick 6 against the Ravens in Week 8. He actually had 11 tackles in this game the very next week. I mean, you're talking about a guy who tackles Derrick Henry at the goal line. TJ Watt's there also. Tackles Derrick Henry at the goal line. It would very easily could have been a 4-down stand. The very next play, called a pass interference. I think DPI on the Steelers gave the Titans a new set of downs. Titans were able to score, I think, get within 27-24. But this week tackles Derrick Henry in a highlight play where he comes out of the game after this. Now, he was only out of the game for 2 plays. He was in on the very next possession. So it's not accurate to say he knocked himself out of the game and didn't come back. He actually came back on the very next possession. But then the following week in Baltimore, really unusual circumstances surrounding this game, obviously, with the Ravens having so many players test positive. I think the Steelers had some as well. Game, I think, got delayed a week or something like that. Gets a pick 6 against Lamar Jackson and 11 tackles. This is switch coverage that the Steelers run in their cover 3. Kind of catches the Ravens by surprise on 3rd down. Vince Williams, who, like I said, was a criminally underrated linebacker, spot shadowed here. He steps up as a blitzer. Spillane takes over his pass drop, and Bud Dupree drops out and takes over Spillane's. So they're just basically masking who's dropping onto the hashes, commonly known as the hook to curl areas. There's Spillane, Dupree right in front of him. They kick the D-line over. Spillane shifts over for whatever reason. The Ravens didn't adjust. Lamar or Prochet didn't see it, but the tempo of it, I think, is great because Spillane tempos Lamar's eyes. And he leaves enough space, just enough space for a throwing lane here to Prochet. Lamar doesn't see him break at all. I think he kind of looks like he baited him from this end zone angle. You're welcome to let me know if you disagree with that assertion that he baited him. Either way, clearly was an effective coverage used by the Steelers and the stunt package. And then Spillane executed it perfectly, along with Bud Dupree and Vince Williams. In the last four, getting back to 2022 film, in the last 4 games of the season, he played 100% of the Steelers' defensive snaps. 100%. For my money, from what I've seen out of the Steelers, which is at least 2 games a year since 2019, since I became a content creator, for the Ravens, not for the Ravens organization, but a Ravens fan who's trying to become a content creator. Let me phrase it that way. Other than Vince Williams, I haven't seen a linebacker who was more fundamentally sound. An every down inside linebacker that's played for them in recent years. The only guy that I think equals what Spillane has shown on film has been Vince Williams. I mean, it's not to disparage Miles Jack and Devin Bush and some of the other guys. They're just not as versatile. In that last month of the season, when the Steelers had wins over the Raiders, Panthers, Ravens, and Browns, Spillane had 36 tackles, including 26 solo in 4 starts. He showed very smart coverage, in my opinion, and that just as usual aggressive downhill run fits like you're seeing here. I thought it would be a no-brainer that he would return to Pittsburgh in 2022, just based on some of this film alone. But again, I think he must have made an incredible impression on the Raiders. Now you're going to see pass drops here, by the way. You're going to see his coverage versatility. I don't think anyone expected the Raiders or any team to go so heavy on him, but good for him. 2 years, $9 million. I can't blame him one bit for taking that contract, but the 2022 film, for me, for my money, and I'll break this play down here in a minute, shows an aggressive, smart player who's just grown up. He's great at taking on blocks. He fits extremely well on his run reads, showing you that twice through. And like I said, 12 tackles in this Raider game. I'm highlighting some of the pass reads here. He takes great depth in his drops, forces throws underneath. I'm talking about zone coverage. He gets in the window spectacularly. Versatility in coverage is a lot more than what some people would expect. He plays man against the running back well, which is a typical coverage for inside linebackers. I haven't seen him get burnt many times, if at all. He's buzzing the flat here in this kind of like unusual way to get into a cover 2 look. He's just an expert coverage guy in zone, particularly cover 3. Another example of him jamming the X receiver and then taking out into the flats on a 3rd and long. He doesn't take the bait on what some people call sucker routes. Here's going to be some examples of him playing man against tight ends sometimes, and he's pretty good at that too. I'm a little surprised by some of it, the film, to be honest with you, after breaking it down in the last week or so. I've seen him make plays like this intermittently, but not get consistent reps, and I've always wondered why. If you're a Steelers fan and you've listened this long, first of all, appreciate you, checking out the video. But let me know in the comment section what your perception is, because maybe, you watch 16, 17 games a year, depending on what season it was, and you would have more information about it. I just think he's shown, particularly against the Ravens. I mean, the guys play super well against the Ravens on at least 3 occasions, including this game in 2022. Price tag seemed to be why maybe he wasn't. I thought the price tag was maybe why he wasn't playing as much. This play's brilliant. I'm going to pull this back to the beginning here in a moment. It's an attempted screen by the Ravens on a 2nd and long. I think that the Steelers have, well, first of all, this coverage, Spillane is on the running back. But I'm going to use this to set up the next play, because on the next play, the running back motions out pre-snap, and Spillane stays there. I suspect that the Steelers have some kind of check on when the running back motions out as to whether or not they want the linebacker to go with the running back, or in this case, when Justice Hill motions out, they send a nickel strong safety with him, and Spillane stays in. And I don't think he is going to cover the tight end necessarily man. I think it's possible that this is the defender assigned to Isaiah Likely. But Spillane's awareness when he comes off of the stunt, he sees a lineman who's going in the wrong direction and knows something's up. That's a trigger. He's following the lineman, takes him right to the football. A brilliant play by him. I think the Ravens had to settle for a field goal here, but I could be wrong. I thought that in 2022, the Steelers were playing Miles Jack and Devin Bush because of their price tags. And Spillane's only getting paid $850,000 a year. Kind of looked at as an expendable guy. Certainly ended up being expendable because they let him go to the Raiders. I think he was a restricted free agent. I thought he's always been better than Bush as an overall complete inside linebacker. And no disrespect to Devin Bush because I know he went through an ACL injury that certainly impacted his athletic ability. I thought if Spillane played more snaps in 2022, you're looking at 100 tackle a season guy. I just love how expertly he stays underneath of and inside receivers on a leverage side to really not give the quarterback a good option. He doesn't end up getting the interception here, but he's underneath of all of these routes and still able to maintain eyes on the quarterback. He just has this ability to see the quarterback and drift in a direction that keeps him inside of receivers on the good leverage side. In this case, DB for his team makes the play. I thought he had a great season, to be honest with you. I thought he showed a lot of coverage versatility across the season. I have no idea what PFF has him rated as. I do not care whatsoever. I watched the film, and I evaluate the film. In this case, I watched the last 4 games of the season in depth for the Steelers, and came away even more impressed with Robert Spillane than I thought I would be. Mark Robinson as well. I think he could be another guy who could bring the same level of tenacity, especially against the run, and maybe he'll have to improve against the pass in some ways like Spillane has in the last couple of years as well. Moving on to the game that, for me, even though I'm a Ravens fan, it gives me conflicted feelings to say this. He had an amazing game in Week 17 in Baltimore. You'll see him spot shadow he just did a little bit of everything against the Ravens. When the Ravens were in 22 personnel, the Steelers matched with basically 6-2. So what I mean by 6-2 is they matched with 4 down linemen, 2 outside linebackers, and 2 inside linebackers. Some people would just call it a 4-4. But in this case, Mark Robinson is one inside linebacker. Spillane spot shadowed is the other. Highsmith is an outside linebacker. Watt is an outside linebacker. In between Highsmith and Watt, you can see 4 helmets, even though the screen is darkened because I got reverse spot shadow. 6-2, 4-3, or 4-4, whatever you want to call it. Spillane played everything brilliantly. I watched this a couple times through. Look at how he gets his hands on the tight end, plays through the contact, destroys the block, and then gets up on J.K. Dobbins. Solo tackle, right there at the line of scrimmage. Just takes great angles against the run. Here's that play that I showed you earlier, the tackle for loss on the screen to Isaiah Likely, who's a bull to try to bring down. Just an amazing play, I think. The third play here, he's covering Mark Andrews out in the flats. It's to the wide side of the field. I mean, this is 22 personnel by the Ravens. Am I crazy for thinking that this is a really impressive play? When I say it's 22 personnel, you got 2 running backs, Dobbins and Ricard, and then a tight end over here, I think, is Oliver. There is Andrews, so that's your 22, 2 running backs, 2 tight ends, and then 1 receiver. So the Ravens have correctly said, all right, well, they're matching us with 6-2 or 4-4 personnel, whatever you want to call it. Only 3 DBs on the field. So we're going to spread Mark Andrews out. Look who the Steelers trust to go out here. It's Robert Spillane. I don't know the health of Miles Jack and Devin Bush in this week, but they made the right decision. They picked they had the right 2 guys. Maybe they didn't have a choice. Maybe Bush and Miles Jack was injured, but they spread him out here. He covered Mark Andrews out in the flats. Could he cover Mark Andrews, down the field consistently? No, but he defeated blocks by Mark Andrews. He covered him out in space, tackled J.K. Dobbins one-on-one after defeating the block of a tight end, Josh Oliver. I think Spillane's versatility was a huge part of this game plan, the way that it worked out. Did the Steelers know that him and Mark Robinson were going to combine for, I think, 20 tackles in one game? Maybe they didn't know that. Maybe they hoped for that. Call me crazy. If you're watching the film and you watch this long, first of all, I appreciate it. Let me know if you had the same feelings. I thought him and Mark Robinson played their asses off, and especially out in space like this play. Being able to cover Mark Andrews. He gets help from Mark Robinson late getting there to help hold Mark Andrews to, I think, a 4-yard gain. He gets just to the 40-yard line, I think is where the next play is spotted. There's another similar play later on to this one. I just thought that it's a unique set of plays from the Ravens Steelers game, which is always fun to watch. You know, it's no fun to watch your team lose as a Ravens fan, or you know, if you're a Steelers fan. But I wanted to show these 4 or 5 plays. I thought they illustrated how well Robert Spillane played in Week 17, along with Mark Robinson. I was already a fan of Spillane since the hit against Derrick Henry in 2020. Even though I'm a Ravens fan, I just thought he played well every time against us. I thought he showed a lot of discipline and a lot of trademarks of a quality inside linebacker, even though he didn't always get consistent reps. I'm kind of glad now to see him outside the AFC North for real. I thought his film late 2022 was full of just classic grown man inside linebacker play with real coverage versatility sprinkled in, as I've mentioned a couple of times. I was surprised that the Raiders gave him so much money, however. Um, it's a good thing if you're an NFL fan or an NFL player or an agent. It shows that guys like him, he's undrafted, or Mark Robinson, who was a 7th-round draft pick last year, shows that they are able to, you know, through hard work, through discipline, and putting together good plays on film, sometimes great plays, they're able to reap the financial rewards. So good for them. Let me know what you think of the video. If you appreciate me breaking down Robert Spillane, he's out of the AFC North, so if you're a Ravens fan, Steelers fan, you know, whatever, you may not necessarily be interested in him, but this was a guy who I always admired and thought played better than he was given credit for. Again, I don't care about rating services or PFF or any of them. I don't think they're accurate at all with how they grade certain positions, particularly inside linebackers. I thought this guy showed tremendous potential early in his career, 2020, with those 2 splash plays that I showed you and we talked about at length. And then now he's grown up into just a guy who can be relied upon every down. Las Vegas, unfortunately for him, maybe, seems to be a place where high-level defensive players sometimes go and disappear, or sometimes go and just never have the same impact again. So we'll see what Robert Spillane can come up with in Las Vegas. If you guys appreciated this video, please let me know in the comments section. If you haven't done so already, please consider subscribing to the channel. And if you think other, you know, NFL fans, Steelers fans, Raiders fans, whatever, would appreciate this content, this commentary film study on Robert Spillane, please consider grabbing a link and sharing it on social media to help this video get more reach.